public meeting. We appreciate your interest and attendance, and thank you for caring about your public lands. I'd like to introduce the DCNR staff that is here today and will be taking your questions. DCNR Secretary Rick Allen, State Forester Dan Devlin, Loyalsock Forest District Manager Rich Blinsky, Marcellus Program Manager Ariane Proctor, and, well, when he comes back to his seat, DCNR Chief Counsel Dennis Whitaker, who will be seated shortly. This meeting is one step in a number of methods to communicate this complicated, important subject to the public. We've held stakeholder meetings, conducted a webinar, posted materials on the DCNR website, and set up an email account for comments. We want this to be a productive use of everyone's time. We know you have questions and concerns, and we want to hear them tonight. We have structured the meeting in a way that hopefully will allow everyone who wants to have the opportunity to speak. We know that many of you are passionate about this subject, but please let's make this a respectful conversation. After a brief presentation to set the context of the Loyalsock, we will take a short amount of time to answer questions. We ask that you limit yourself to 1 or 2 questions so everyone can get a chance to speak. If you have any other questions and no one else asks the same question, then you may return to the microphone, which will be situated right there. During the Q&A period, we ask that you hold your comments or statements again so we can fairly address the questions of the audience members. After the Q&A, we invite people to come to the microphone to give their statements lasting no more than 5 minutes. If you would rather submit written or online statements, you may do that as well, and we'll let you know how to do that after the presentation. We will not be responding to questions during this portion of the presentation. Hopefully there's plenty of time for everyone who wants to comment, but as always, please be mindful of the others that want to be heard. And again, the microphone is situated right there. Right now, Secretary Allen will provide a few opening remarks.
Thanks, Ellen. Thank you for all of you for joining us here today. We welcome you for your comments. Our intention is to have this meeting today to provide information about the Loyalsock Forest area and the lands that have been termed the Clarence Moorlands. We are expecting an open dialogue. We are going to be providing some information. Some of this you might have seen on our webcast that we've done. We're going to provide some information about the Loyalsock Forest and Clarence Moorlands. And we're going to have a question and answer session and open up for comment afterwards. As you know, most of you know, as a result of a Commonwealth Court case, this Loyalsock Forest land that we're referring to as Clarence Moor has a very unique and complicated situation in regards to ownership and rights. We've received an awful lot, a huge volume of calls, emails, right-to-know requests, legislators asking us about this potential for drilling. And we've read all the media accounts. So that is why we're here today. We want to make sure that we provide you with the facts. We've seen a lot of information put out there that is contrary to the facts, so we're going to be presenting them here today. We expect, like I said, an open dialogue with all of you, and in order to give you as much time possible, I won't be going into any further comments. We'll go right into our presentation. Ariane?
Thank you, Secretary. We may need to dim the lights a bit so we can. All right, I think we're ready now. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for your interest and your participation. So today I'll talk a little bit about the proposed natural gas development of the Clarence Moorlands, what are commonly referred to as the Clarence Moorlands, in the Loyalsock State Forest. The Loyalsock State Forest is named for the Loyalsock Creek that winds through the forest district. The district covers nearly 115,000 acres in eastern Lycoming, Sullivan, and Bradford counties. Much of this revered forest was purchased from the Central Pennsylvania Lumber Company in the early 1930s, following the lumbering era. The Loyalsock has unique topography which provides habitat for species that are typically found in more northern climates, making them some of the most rare and special habitats in Pennsylvania. The lands highlighted on this map are the reason we're here today. This map illustrates the portion of the Loyalsock commonly referred to as the Clarence Moor lands. The boundary of the Loyalsock is outlined in the bold black line. So you can see this bold black line. Here is the McIntyre Wild Area, Devil's Elbow Natural Area. Rock Run and Pleasant Stream and Lycoming Creek are also located in the vicinity. Lycoming Creek and Pleasant Stream. And Rock Run bounds the McIntyre Wild Area. Also to the west of the moorlands is Track 100, which is operated by Seneca Resources. This is Track 100. Seneca is a wholly owned exploration and production subsidiary of National Fuel Gas Company. In January of 2013, NFG announced significant Marcellus well results from 6 wells on Track 100. The chairman was quoted, with 3 wells reaching peak production rates over 20 million cubic feet of natural gas per day, and all 6 reaching a combined 24-hour peak production rate of 107 million cubic feet per day. These wells represent some of the most productive wells ever drilled in the Marcellus by any operator, and I say this just to let you know that with those great results in that area, you can see why the interest would be in the adjacent Clarence Moorlands. So to the west of the moorlands is also Track 551. This portion here on Bodine Mountain is also part of these Clarence Moorlands, and we'll talk about the map with the different colors in just a moment. Track 551 was leased to Exxon in 2008, who partners with Pennsylvania General Energy, or PGE. It's currently understood that Exxon and PGE have sold their lease rights on this track to Anadarko and their partners. That agreement has not been finalized by the department at this point in time. We have not received all that paperwork, so it's not been finalized. And at this time, PGE and Exxon are currently the lessees of record within the department. It's believed that Anadarko may have applied for an ESCGP permit through the Department of Environmental Protection in the northern portion of the Bodine Mountain. So in this portion on Clarence Moor. But the Bureau of Forestry was not notified in any way that this had occurred. We weren't aware, we did not approve anything in that area. With the passage of Act 13 in 2012, it's now required that a well permit through DEP be acquired prior to any permits being issued for earth disturbance activities. Surface owners are notified through DEP through landowner notification forms, and to date, the department has not received any surface owner notification forms for any portion of the Clarence Moorlands or Track 551. So in order to access Track 551, Anadarko will need to come up, what we believe Anadarko's plans would be to come up through Track 100, across their Bonite Mountain portion here, into Track 551. So this is a unique and complex ownership situation where the court ruling has severed surface access rights from the subsurface rights on a portion of the lands due to a surface access revision in the original deed. It's unlike any of the severed land situations we have across the system today. The areas identified in yellow and orange indicate or represent the moorlands. Over the entire 25,000 acres, the Commonwealth owns and manages the surface as state forest, but does not own the subsurface rights. Since the subsurface rights have been severed from the surface estate, the Commonwealth would not receive any royalty revenue from natural gas development on these 25,000 acres. All of the yellows within, all of the areas within the bold black state forest boundary, but are not colored yellow or orange, are where the Commonwealth both owns the surface and subsurface rights. So all this land here and within here are where the Commonwealth controls the surface and the subsurface. Any development on these areas would generate royalty revenue if ever offered for lease, but currently we are bound by an executive order that has placed a moratorium on issuing oil and gas leases on state forest and state park lands. The lands identified in yellow on this map, which total about 18,000 acres, are the Commonwealth-controlled access areas. The remaining 7,000 acres highlighted in orange are areas that were not subject to the same surface access reversion in the original deed, and the Commonwealth does not possess the same level or control of surface access as in the yellow areas. Many opinions have been offered regarding the extent to which the Commonwealth has the ability to control access on these lands, which in turn would limit development and the ability for the subsurface owners to extract the resource. We acknowledge that we possess greater control of the subsurface when compared to other severed land situations that we routinely encounter. But whether or not it is complete bar to development is still under legal review, and no agreements for access and development have been executed. As we understand, Anadarko is 50% fee mineral owner. They are not just a lessee, as they are on other areas of state forest land located in the Tyadontine State Forest and the Sproul State Forest. It is also understood that the remaining 50% of the subsurface rights have been leased to Southwestern Energy, and the department has had no discussions with Southwestern to date, although we have tried. The proposed development plan on the 25,000-acre contiguous tract of land cited pads on the flat tops and plateaus of the mountains within the lands, with pipelines traversing the valley. Even though we have seen that not all Marcellus is created equally, the success of Seneca's Tract 100 is a strong indication that this reserve could prove to be a very profitable asset to the operators involved. So just a little bit of a timeline. In late 2011, Anadarko staked pads on Bodine Mountain. If you recall, this is an area where the Commonwealth does not have greater control of surface access. The Bureau reviewed the pad locations and found several issues with their locations and denied the pad locations as they were staked. Soon thereafter, Anadarko strongly requested that the department provide them with their standard surface use agreement. Please understand that surface use agreements are far from standard and are specifically tailored to each individual situation. Historically, DCNR has used surface use agreements to manage oil and gas activity on state forest and state park lands where it does not own the subsurface rights. These agreements are voluntary, cooperative, and mutually agreed upon contracts, which add significant level of documented understanding between DCNR and the operator. These contracts serve to protect the Commonwealth assets on the surface while giving companies more certainty and reasonable infrastructure development that is necessary to extract the resource. There are no bonuses or royalties paid as a result of executing surface use agreements. As such, at Anadarko's request, the department provided a tailored surface use agreement to Anadarko. In March 2012, Anadarko presented the department the development plan that proposed natural gas development across 25,000 acres of the Moore lands. The plan estimated disturbance or conversion at 500 acres due to pads, pipelines, compressor stations, freshwater impoundments, and communication towers. The department clearly recognizes that the short-term and cumulative long-term impacts of this conversion within the landscape would be substantial and warrant caution and thoughtful planning prior to the initiation of any development activities. So I'd like to now briefly describe the development plan for the entire Clarence Moore lands as proposed by Anadarko. This has not been accepted, approved, there's no agreements, but we've heard the outcry from the public that they want to see what the plan is. They want to know what it entails, and so I'm about to describe what that looks like. And again, remember that Anadarko only controls 50% of the mineral rights in this area. Many maps that have been posted on the internet are furnished through right to know requests, and development plans are often remain confidential documents until permitted, but we understand and deeply share some of the same concerns as much of our stakeholders have expressed. So we'll get started. The plan called for 500 acres of total conversion over the 25,000 acres, which equates to about less than a 2% conversion of the lands. It included 26 well pads, 15.6 miles of new roads, 15.5 miles of existing roads that would be rebuilt, all within a 35 to 40 foot right-of-way width. The total pipeline that was proposed included a total of 34 miles of new right-of-way. And so you'll see the numbers that I have underneath don't add up, but that's because there are multiple lines, multiple pipelines laid within one right-of-way. So one 40-foot right-of-way may have 5 different lines in it. You may have 2 6-inch lines, one 24-inch steel pipe. So that's why you see the numbers that don't add up to the total of 34 miles. So the right-of-way construction width was estimated to vary from 25 feet to 100 feet, in addition to road width, depending on the existing roads, the number of pipes, the diameter of pipes, and the terrain. All pipelines that were to traverse streams were proposed as open cuts. There was no HDD or hydraulic directional drilling proposed. The development plan as proposed also involved 4 compressor stations on a 500 by 500 footprint. They offered noise mitigation at 50 decibels at the station boundary, which is Lycoming County's ordinance. They also offered to paint the buildings an environmentally sound color. Fences and vegetative screening would be.
How nice.
They also proposed 5 earthen impoundments, freshwater impoundments. The limit of disturbance would be between 12 and 15 acres. And each freshwater impoundment would contain about 15 million gallons of fresh water. In addition, they proposed a safety system communication infrastructure. These were all to be located on the compressor pads. They let us know that this would allow for remote monitoring of assets so that they can control the wells from Houston or from Williamsport if necessary. It provides for the dispatch of personnel in the case of emergency, reduces vehicular traffic, enables security incidents to be identified and addressed. So again, proposed at each well pad, each of the 26 well pads would be a 60-foot tall wooden pole with an antenna on top. And each of the 4 compressor stations would either call for a 120 or a 200-foot self-supporting tower. So those pad towers, as well as the compressor towers, would be used as telemetry data gathering points for well pads, and then repeat back to the other tall towers that serve as the backbone of their communication structure. Anadarko also offered a surface consideration payment of $15 million that was to be paid in 3 installments. Anadarko acknowledged using the Bureau of Forestry right-of-way fee structure based on the 500 acres of disturbance, and that fee structure is up on our website under the Bureau of Forestry right-of-way page. DCNR, as not as a counter, but as doing our own calculations, took those 500 acres of disturbance, applied our right-of-way structure to it, and came more in the range of $22 to $24 million, which would equate to the consideration. So this describes the development plan as proposed by Anadarko, and again, this plan has not been approved nor accepted by the department. Anadarko acknowledged also that in their plan that all development was subject to change based upon environmental surveys, site surveys, wetland delineations, and engineering reviews. And I will also add department approval. It It's obvious that along with the complex surface access issues come complex and sensitive ecological and recreational issues. This map highlights the forestry management activities in this area. There are many active timber management areas which are identified as the green hatched. So all these green hatched marks are where timber activities are currently occurring across those clearance moorlands. There are miles of hiking and snowmobile trails that traverse the lands, and the unique topography make it home to exceptional value wetlands, as well as rare, threatened, and endangered flora and fauna. I'd like to point out the location of Rock Run in comparison to the moorlands. Almost borders the McIntyre Wild area. I can guarantee you will never see development within the valley of Rock Run. Rock Run may be under-drilled, but you will never drive up Rock Run and encounter trucks, and you will not see a well pad next to the falls. It's nearly impossible.
Don't believe it.
It's nearly impossible to put a pad in that valley. It will not happen.
Thank God.
I'd like to also point out that there is a currently existing right-of-way, 30-foot wide, 35-foot wide right-of-way that traverses Clarence Moorlands from north to south. And it's a Sunoco pipeline that comes up through this. Maybe you've traversed it on your hikes, but that is also currently existing. So as you may be aware, DCNR has jurisdiction of plants through the PNDI process in Pennsylvania. So as a result of the Bureau's preliminary ecological review of the area, listed here are some of the necessary surveys that were identified if development were to occur. So surveys would be required in all of the wetlands for northern bulrush, bodge sedge, few-setted sedge, Tuckerman's pondweed, the great spurred violet, and screwstem. Necessary ecological surveys may also include surveys for timber rattlesnake, which is a Pennsylvania candidate at-risk species, the silver-bordered fritillary, which is a vulnerable species, the northern water shrew, which is a Pennsylvania candidate rare species. The department also recommends that tree clearing only occur between November 1st and March 31st. White nose syndrome has reduced the population of most cave hibernating bat species within the Commonwealth between 93 and 99%, leaving these species dangerously close to local extinction. So bat surveys would be necessary if clearing is proposed outside of that window. The exceptional value wetlands in this area of the Clarence Moorlands were identified as habitat to the yellow-bellied flycatcher, also a Pennsylvania endangered species. It is understood that this is only one of two populations in all of Pennsylvania state forests, with only 9 populations existing statewide. This is one of the rarest nesting birds in Pennsylvania and generally nests only in remote high elevation wetlands. As reported by the Pennsylvania Game Commission, the yellow-bellied flycatcher can only survive if forested wetlands and conifer stands and extensive upland forests are preserved, and sites need protection with generous buffers. This species will be an important consideration if any development moves forward. So conflicts to recreation as a result of the proposed development plan are of primary concern to the department. This map shows some of those trails. Old Loggers Path is highlighted in red, and all identified in the purple and black are snowmobile trails in the area. The town of Maston that serves as the trailhead. There's also primitive areas and vistas also within these lands. Should development be approved and move forward, all conflicts with existing trail systems will require mitigation prior to the commencement of infrastructure construction. And I'm sure at that time we'll work with our stakeholders to determine the best relocations, but at this time, trail location has not been considered since the direction of development has not yet been determined. So we are unable to share those aspects at this time. We've discussed the Old Loggers Path and are acutely aware of its value to state forest visitors. The trailhead for Old Loggers Path is located in Maston, which was once a lumber mill company town with over 1,000 residents, and later the site of the CCC Camp S80. This 27-mile Old Loggers Path hiking trail traverses the valleys of Rock Run and Pleasant Stream. The footpath utilizes old logging trails and grades of logging roads, and it's a favorite destination among many state forest visitors. So the same goes for the snowmobile trails within this area. The Loyalsock State Forest has 115 miles of joint use roads that are not plowed in the winter, but are groomed for snowmobile use. The current gas activity on Track 100 has temporarily suspended snowmobile traffic from 15 miles of the available snowmobile trail system. Additionally, this area of the Loyalsock offers some of the most primitive recreation opportunities available to the system. Sharptop Vista is also in the area and is another premier destination spot for hikers, sightseers, snowmobilers alike in this area of the Loyalsock. I'm sorry. Okay. You may recognize this map as it was posted on the Frack Tracker website as a result of being obtained through a right-to-know request. This map was developed by the Bureau of Forestry to highlight the impacts of the proposed development on primitive recreation areas. So we took the proposed development as provided by Anadarko, and we overlaid it in GIS on our Recreation Opportunity Spectrum, or ROS, layer, which identifies where the semi-primitive, non-motorized, as well as primitive areas were within the Loyalsock, and so that we could see and identify where those conflicts with the primitive recreation would be. So just a little bit about that ROS system. Since 2005, the Bureau has used ROS as a framework to identify, classify, plan, and manage a range of recreational settings. There are 5 distinct settings or recreation zones: primitive, semi-primitive, non-motorized, semi-primitive, semi-developed, and developed, which are defined by using specific physical, managerial, and social criteria. The development plan as proposed by Anadarko will reduce the semi-primitive, non-motorized recreation zones in the Loyalsock Forest by 45%.
No, it won't.
And you can see these are the areas right here. So we don't have any primitive areas within these lands. There are no primitive areas, but there are semi-primitive, non-motorized areas. They are indicated in the bright yellow, here and here. A little bit about road use. Road use is also of utmost concern to reduce conflicts with state forest visitors, and for those reasons, the Bureau has already identified which roads it would allow to be open to heavy hauling should development occur. Light hauling pickup trucks will be authorized on portions of Pleasant Stream Road and Hillsgrove Road to the south. Here's the Maston camping area, and this is the site of the only designated camping area in the Loyalsock State Forest, and utilizes the remnants of the historic Civilian Conservation Corps camp, the CCC camp. This site is also the trailhead for the Old Loggers Path. For those reasons, it's imperative that this road not be subject to heavy hauling, so there will be no heavy hauling down through this area. Roads forbidden from use by natural gas development include Rock Run Road and Yellow Dog Road. So our next steps. We'll gather and review stakeholder recommendations for mitigation projects and avoidance areas that you'll offer today and at any time, and I'll provide the website that you can submit all comments to at any time. We'll continue monitoring efforts and gathering baseline data among these 25,000 acres. We'll determine the extent of the Commonwealth surface control on those 18,000 acres. We'll negotiate a surface development management agreement similar to what I discussed as a surface use agreement for management of the surface in the areas that they are afforded an opportunity to extract the resource on those 7,000 acres. And if development should occur outside of those acres. Those 7,000 acres, you may know, are very sensitive lands, and perhaps development isn't appropriate in those lands at all. We'll coordinate with the PNDI jurisdictional agencies as a result of any future regulatory permitting. So once permits are applied for, they must also approve, and all the jurisdictional agencies through Fish and Wildlife Service, DCNR, the Pennsylvania Game Commission, and the Fish and Boat Commission must all sign off on any proposed infrastructure or require mitigation if development were occur in the areas as proposed. So we will coordinate with those jurisdictional agencies to minimize and mitigate any potential impacts. So the department must weigh whether or not negotiating a management agreement would best serve the forest, thereby prohibiting development in some of the most environmentally sensitive areas of the Clarence Moorlands. So here's the website, or the email that you can address or send comments to at any time. The Bureau of Forestry's mission statement clearly states and provides for the environmentally sound utilization of mineral resources as a key component of the state forest management. Oil and gas management decisions must be based on the mission and work towards ensuring long-term health, viability, and productivity of the Commonwealth's forests, and to conserve native and wild plants while honoring subsurface rights, private subsurface rights where applicable. The Bureau's gas management approach of avoid, minimize, mitigate, and monitor strives to promote environmentally sound gas exploration that maintains contiguous forests, conserves wetlands, protects threatened and endangered plants and animals, upholds water quality, maintains forest wild character, and provides high-quality recreation. The department clearly recognizes that this is a complex situation, and the short-term and cumulative impacts of this potential conversion within the landscape are anticipated to be substantial enough to warrant caution and thoughtful planning prior to the initiation of any level of development activities. So that concludes my presentation, and we'll move on to the next segment of the meeting.